But that started this transition of like every dollar I got went into that truck to figure out how to put bumpers on it, how to weld, how to cage it, how to do everything. And so, yeah, back in like 2000 was like go time, like nonstop in the driveway every single weekend working on it. Back in the day, we started a bunch of friends called White Trash FAB. There's like 4 or 5 of us in my mom's driveway, putting fiberglass on, building bumpers.
Were you guys getting customers?
No, it was just us.
Oh,
like,
just your...
yeah, it was just a bunch of friends. Like,
Yeah.
you know, you could just find us on the weekends working on our trucks. Well, it's interesting. Like, I don't know enough about the social media side of things, but I like to pay attention to what people are doing and try to figure out why stuff works. And I was just talking to somebody the other day about how, you know, years ago, the whole not social media, but the whole reality TV thing was such a hit, right? And then most of that turned scripted, unfortunately. Everything they were doing is scripted, like, let's be honest. But everyone watched, Snooki on TV. Everyone watched all that stuff, right? It was the biggest thing in the world. And now...
Snooki, as Jersey Shore?
Yeah, of course. Who didn't watch that? At least you're old like I am. But then you see like a conversion to now, like everyone's on YouTube, everyone's on social media, and you want like that personal touch of like who is that person? And I think that's where Wilkie does a good job, or even Terror Crew. Like you're watching James on TV interview people, and so you're starting to understand his persona, and you're not necessarily buying into Terror Crew, but you're buying into James, right? Yeah. And that makes it a lot more personal. And then you can get behind those companies and like, you know, hey, that guy's a really good guy. I want to rep him. I want to rep Terror Crew and that type of stuff. And so to me, it looks like it's just a new wave of how it all started with TV, right? And now it's just going to YouTube and it's, you know, podcasts. Everyone wants to know who the people are. Like, we're kind of done with dealing with actors. And it's like, you know, who's this real guy? Like, you know, I watched a lot of random stuff on YouTube and it's like, I want to watch the random guy work on his truck and like mess up just like I do at the end of the day. I don't want to watch, you know,
some production of some perfection, you know, like
that I'm never going to be able to create.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's kind of what everyone's in tune with right now. It's a big thing.
Yeah. No. And on our side, we've done like you talking about like not knowing the social media side of it, dude, before I started here, like all I knew was Dweezy Films and like growing that page and just shooting from the hip all the time, like figuring out algorithms. Like I had no idea about like the ins and outs of all the backside of that stuff. But here it's more of like a numbers thing. So, you know, like we have YouTube, we have Facebook, we have TikTok, we have Instagram for Cal West and LSK. So I'm running like 7-8 accounts. And dude, it's like it's a stressful. I never thought I would say that. Like social media could be stressful, but like if you're doing it more on like a business aspect and trying to take something and grow it into a lifestyle, almost, you know, I don't think LSK will ever be like a lifestyle like Terror Crew. Like I don't think we want that, but just to have it like we the first Fiesta pre-runner event we went to, a bunch of people came up to me and they're like, looking at the tent, they're like, what is LSK? Yeah. Like, well, we've been around here for quite a few years, you know, but I think it's just been so out of the picture, you know, and then now we're starting to go to all these little truck meets, going to the Off-Road Expo, just trying to get involved. We did the Clean Dezert for Fast Lab. Yeah. Just getting out there and helping the industry as much as we can, you know. And I think it goes a long ways for people. Like they want to be a part of LSK or whatever these companies are. They want to be a part of Clean Dezert. They want to be a part of Terror Crew because they know they can go meet these guys personally out there.
You know, it's self-promotion, right? And like it'd be interesting for me. Like all this is super interesting, right? Like I have a day job that doesn't allow me to get into understanding as much of this as you do.
What's your day? First off, so we have Adam from Clean Dezert here on the podcast.
That's me.
And we're going to break down how he got to this point in life of running this organization, and we appreciate everything you guys do.
Oh, thanks. We're having a good time with it, and it seems to be everyone else is having a great time. So we're just going to continue having fun, and as long as we're having fun, then it benefits everybody. Everybody leaves having a great time.
Yeah,
that's what we're about.
So, day job right now. What are you doing?
So I've worked for the company I work for 23 years. It's kind of a weird niche market. So we measure office buildings. So when buildings are bought and sold, and they need to know the square footage to apply a dollar amount to, our company measures them. When leases are written for a suite, somebody wants to lease a part of a building, you need to know how much square footage that suite is, as well as all the common areas, so corridors, restrooms, all that stuff. So our company measures those buildings. I've been there 23 years, so I started out just as a grunt doing CAD work. Then I went into managing and helping grow the company from like 8 employees to 58 employees, and managed all production. And now I do sales for the company. With that, I help write the standards. It's called BOMA, but how you write the standards for how buildings are measured all across North America. There's probably only like a dozen companies in the country that do what we do. And somehow I'm a part of that. It helps me afford off-roading my, what we do. Not that I'm rich by any means, but that's my day job. It's kind of just a random thing.
Never even heard of that.
Nobody has it. Truthfully, when I applied for it, and again, this is going to show how old I am. I opened up the paper when I was, 20 years old, I guess. Was looking for jobs, and it was like CAD drafter, and it's like, I was going to school for that. Did it in high school. Did it a little bit in junior college. I'm going to apply for this and see what happens. And it's been a good fit for me, and it's allowed me to grow within the company. Mm-hmm. I met my wife there. We had a kid. And so it's really my main focus in life, and doing that. But now I'm transitioning. I've done so much there that now, I want to spend some time having fun. That's kind of where we're going back with Clean Dezert right now.
Yeah. So off-roading, before, you said when you were 20, you got this job?
Yeah.
So were you into the industry at all before college, before all that? Like, did you grow up doing that?
No, not really. My parents, we never went camping. We'd never been to the desert. My parents hate all that stuff. I think, I grew up in Orange County. I think pretty typical childhood with like every kid saw Back to the Future and wants the truck on there, right? Mm. Every kid wants a dirt bike, and every kid, hopefully, at some point had an RC car. And so with those three things, RC cars, I had them as a kid. I played with them. Watched Back to the Future. I wanted that truck. I got a dirt bike. My parents had a vacation house in Oregon when I was like 13. My dad bought a KX80. I crashed it the first time, like ripped myself up. My mom wanted to sell it. My dad said, let him hurt himself a little bit more. And I rode that, 1 week out of the year until I was like 18 years old. I bought my first dirt bike off my friend's dad. My mom said she'd throw me out of the house if I ever bought one. And, I called her bluff. I bought it because I wanted it. I kept it at his house for 6 months and finally brought it home. And during that time, me and my friends had some dirt bikes, and we were just kind of exploring. And we laugh about it now. We didn't know anything about the desert, right? Like, didn't know where Ocotillo was, didn't know where Barstow was. We'd just go to the top of the Cajon Pass and find a patch of dirt and just go right around. We learned, I guess it's called Honda Valley. We used to ride back in there a whole bunch. Got kicked out of there a bunch of times, but we rode dirt bikes for a while. And the whole reason I got into trucks, when I was right about 18, I bought a Ford Ranger. And like any kid, you want it lifted. I went into 4 parts, all cocky. I was working a job at the time, and I was like, I can afford stuff. And so I went in 4 parts, and I was like, I have this I-Beam Ranger. Like, I want the best thing you have. And the guy looks at me, he's like, all right. He puts together a price, and it was a Fab Tech kit with custom beams, dual shocks, the shock hoops.
I think our age group, I think we've all had a Fab Tech kit at some point.
Well, so here's the kicker. I couldn't even afford it. The guy's like $3,500, and I was like,
for front and rear, or just the front end?
Just the front.
Yeah.
And I was like, no way. Like, who's spending $3,500 on a front kit? Like, no, that doesn't happen, right? And so my next question is like, what's the cheapest thing you got? And he's like, oh, we'll put you into this pro comp, like drop bucket lift, whatever. I was like, it's going to make my truck look cool. And he's like, yeah, totally. And so I was like, well, let's do it. We're good.
Yeah.
Put that on the truck. And, I think I had 31s at the time, which I thought were huge. And
Dude, tire size nowadays is
ridiculous.
so crazy. Like as a kid, you would see like 37s and it looked like super swampers, And now I have 37s on my truck, and then I'm looking at all these guys with 40s. I feel like I have little tires.
I had the same issue with my truck. I mean, growing up and building my Ranger, like 31s were big, then 33s were big, and then 35s, right? And now with my F-150, we call it the Fraptor because it's not a real Raptor, but it looks like one. I got it with 39s, and I was like, dude, no way. Like 39 stock hubs, like all bad all day long. I went back to 37s, and it looked like I might as well have put 35s on it.
Yeah.
And so now I'm back on 39s.
You just
again.
put the 39s back on?
I just put 39s back on because let's be honest, it looks cooler than 37s.
Yeah.
We'll see how long they last, but yeah, it's amazing. Like seeing the transition, because again, going back to, I was 18 in 1998, started building the truck in 1999, 2000. Like nobody had 37s, nobody had 39s,
No.
35s. And we joke about it, right? Like back then, if you had coilovers, you might as well have been Robbie Gordon because nobody had them. Like nobody had that type of suspension. And so, going back to the Pro Comp lift, like we put our dirt bikes in the back. We went out to Honda Valley to go riding. And I remember seeing like a bump, right? And I was like, guys, I got this. Like we're going to hit this, right? Like this is going to be cool. And we hit the first whoop, and what I didn't realize is it like got way bigger right after that. And I was going too fast. My dirt bike ended up on the roof of my truck. The other one was hanging out the back. The tailgate was dragging. And that day, and it had to have been like 1999 or so, I was like, Pro Comp's just that's not the business. We need something else, right? And so just started researching and figuring out like, how do you, like, what's better? And that took me, started with Camberg radius arms with my Pro Comp lift. And then when I got more money, I bought beams, powder coated them FabTech blue because FabTech was the shit back in the day. Yeah. And I got ridiculed quite a bit for that. But that started this transition of like every dollar I got went into that truck to figure out how to put bumpers on it, how to weld, how to cage it, how to do everything. And so, back in like 2000 was like go time, like nonstop in the driveway every single weekend working on it. Back in the day, we started a bunch of friends called White Trash Fab. There's like 4 or 5 of us in my mom's driveway, putting fiberglass on, building bumpers.
Were you guys getting customers?
No, it was just us.
Oh, just your...
Yeah, it was just a bunch of friends. Like, you could just find us on the weekends working on our trucks. Harbor Freight, the tube bender, like it was, everyone called them the kinkers back in the day, but like, if you did it right and you didn't, overstress it, like you could not get kinks in the tubes. Flux core welders, like just trying to figure it out. But it was like the start of pre-runners, at least for me back then. I know there was a lot of stuff before that, but there wasn't a huge group of like, not like today, right? Like we went to Fiesta Island. How many trucks were there? Like hundreds.
Did you go to the event for Fiesta Pre-Runners the weekend before?
I didn't. I just went to the one with Down from Auburn.
So the Fiesta Pre-Runner one, I think they had like 1,000 trucks. I think Down from Auburn had 500 or 600 trucks. There was
So like back then, right? Like if you saw a pre-runner, like that was the one in all of like, 50-mile radius.
Yeah.
So like, you almost knew everyone. And, that transitioned into like, again, going back to old school, we talked about it earlier, but Desert Rangers, when that first started, there was even some forums prior to that, Off-Road Rangers, prerunners.net days. And like, it's all this old school stuff where like you could start to see like people build stuff, and everything was built out of people's garage. There was no real shops. I think Camberg started in like 97, right? So they weren't even around that long by the time I started buying stuff, and they were still pretty small shop back at the time.
I'm sure those pages, people probably helped each other out instead of ridiculing them about everything. I'm sure you had your mixture of people, but
let's be honest. So the whole reason Desert Rangers was started, so there was a group, Off-Road Rangers, a little bit older crowd, a little bit more conservative, and they didn't like the early 20-year-old kids, who I was at the time, obviously much older now, but they didn't like these young kids that were like cocky, loud, talking a lot of shit to each other. And so everyone kept getting like suspended or banned or whatever. And our friend Jeremy at the time was like, I'm starting my own forum. Like, we're going to do this. And it basically, I think it said, like, the intro page was Desert Rangers, we use our trucks. And like, let's be honest, like, they were like junky pre-runners. Like, there was nothing glorious, but we all went out and were beating on our trucks back for the day, like, quite a bit. And while everyone did help each other, there was a lot of shit talking. And like leading up, like years later, as we were racing, there would be like 50, 60, 70 pages of before like the night race of everyone just telling each other how stupid they were and like how bad their trucks sucked. Right. And it was fun, like so much fun. And as long as you had a little bit of thick skin, like DR back in the day was killer for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that it's so hard to find groups like that nowadays, at least online. Like, I think in person you can have the shit talkers and you can mess around with your buddies. But I don't know, dude. Like, for boating, like, I'm in some jet boat groups, and it's the same thing. Like, you have the old crowd, the old guys, the river rats that super helpful in there. They're telling you like, hey, don't do this, don't do that. This is what works. This doesn't work. And then you have like the younger crowd, which is probably the same situation, the 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds that go in there and they're just talking shit on everything.
Yeah.
And people are just shutting them down left and right, you know? But I think that the truck world, it's hard to find like helpful people nowadays for whatever reason. Unless you're like talking to the older dudes that have been around for a long time, you know, but
it's interesting. I mean, we all transition, right? Like, I look back to me in my 20s and it was like, well, I was a dick to a lot of people. And cocky and stuff, and
it's
now
egos.
Yeah, oh, it totally is. Because, and like now that I'm a parent too, I'm watching it out of kids. So my daughter's only 7, right? But she loves to tell me like daily that I'm wrong, and it's like, girl, like you haven't even lived long enough to understand, right?
Yeah.
And in our 20s, like the same thing was happening. Was like we wanted to tell every 40-year-old out there that they were wrong. The problem is like when you turn 40, you're like, 20-year-olds are dumb. Like, they haven't seen anything. Like, you're still suckling at the teat, right? Like, you're barely out of your parents' house, maybe. Like, you know, you haven't worked a job. You haven't paid your taxes. Like, you're still learning all this stuff. And so I think it's just evolution for everyone. Like, you learn all that. And I'm sure when I'm 60, or even if you talk to my dad now, he's probably like, yeah, you know, my son Adam's an idiot. Like, he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, I'm in a weird on the film side of off-road. Because I have, like, if I go to the track, moto track, I'm filming, like, 16, 17-year-olds.
Yeah.
And then if I go to the desert, there's, like, a mixture of, like, 20-year-olds up to 30, maybe. And it is so hard to just be myself. Because I have the older crowd, I have the younger crowd, and the middle crowd. And, like, you find yourself, like, leaning towards being an idiot, like the younger crowd, or, like, okay, now I'm around like older people. Let me, you know, straighten up a little bit. But it's hard, dude. It's hard, like finding a good groove with different generations in the same industry. You know?
Yeah, I could see that being hard. I struggle with at least with Clean Dezert, is I'm old now, right? I still think I'm 18.
Yeah.
But obviously I'm not. And so my concern is like being relevant with the younger kids, right?
I think that's what I was trying to say, like being relevant with talking to a 17-year-old. You know? Their lingo today is so weird. So it's different. And then they're a technology generation full time. Yeah. So you can't even barely have a conversation with half of them because they're face deep into a phone. But yeah, it's definitely hard being relevant with different generations right now.
Yeah, I mean, we see that. One of my good friends started Bad Lines, Good Times Forum as a void for DR, obviously. But it's interesting. For me, it's cool to kind of go back to that type of discussion because everyone is so helpful on there. And everyone wants to help. And really, like, without Desert Rangers, Clean Dezert probably would have never started, been as big as it was. But it's interesting, we're at King of the Hammers, and my buddy Elliot was talking to a 17-year-old. And he's like, hey, you should join our forum. And he was like, what's that?
What's a forum?
Yeah. And it was like, well, how do I get to it? And he's like, well, open up the internet and type this in. And he's like, is it like on Instagram? And he's like, well, we have a thing, but like to talk to people, you have to go on here. And like, it was kind of blowing his mind. And so, yeah, like it's a sad day when you start to realize like you're too old to have conversations sometimes. But,
your kids make you feel old? My kids
yeah,
are amazing. They're in the desert with us all the time, riding dirt bikes, trucks. They love it. But some of this, my oldest son, he's almost 12. Some of the stuff he says to me now, like he'll tell me, he's like, Dad, you're getting old. I'm like, thanks, dude. I'll still knock you out.
yeah, exactly. You don't want to take it as a parent, right?
Yeah.
I apologize to my dad all the time. I was like, man, how did you not kill me like 100 times raising me? Like I was such a dick.
Yeah.
And like all those times I told you you're wrong, I'm sorry, but you're right. Right. And like, that's the hardest thing is like realizing that. And now seeing like, I complained to him. I'm like, dude, this thing my daughter just did or whatever it is, and he just laughs and he's like, yeah, you did all that to me too. And it's like, dang it. You don't want it, but it comes full circle every single time.
Yeah. No, daughters, by the way, are amazing. I have 2 of them, and talk about a change of heart in a man,
Oh God.
Like my oldest son, we can beat each other up in school.
Yeah.
But like the different type of love and compassion for a daughter is...
me personally, I fought, I didn't want to get married. I was with my wife like maybe 8-9 years before we got married. And the only reason I really succumbed to it, I guess, was she does way too much for me and life was going to be really hard if she left, right? It's a bad thing to say, but it's true.
You compliment, you're 50-50 in the relationship, right?
Well, she probably is a little bit more. I'm
75-25.
Yeah. But then like we started talking about having kids, which I really didn't want, for a lot of personal reasons, but like having our daughter, there's not you don't realize it until you have a kid, right? And I was like, no, I have to have a boy. He has to ride dirt bikes. We're going to build trucks together. We're going to be in the garage nonstop. Like this kid is going to be the coolest kid in the world, right? And lo and behold, like, hey, you're having a girl. I was like, uh-oh. Like, I don't know how to play with Barbies. Like, I don't know how to do that stuff. She's like, there's going to be a clash there. Cause like, I don't know what girls like, right? Like lucky enough to even talk to my wife. Right. But that little girl, like, unless you have one, like, I think it's hard to ever understand, but I would sell like my pre-runner was my baby. I told my wife, like, she would leave before my race truck ever left. Right.
Yeah.
As soon as we had the daughter, like, it wasn't as soon as, but like, then I started realizing like, no, that kid needs to be in the truck with me and it's not going to happen in a 2-seat Ranger. So like, see a truck, like, I don't care. And so I miss it and stuff, but like kids are a whole new ball game.
Yeah. And if you bring them up as a baby into what we do, I mean, they kind of naturally fall into it. And like,
oh, absolutely.
I know people who kind of just stopped everything they've done because they have a kid and they have to make sure the kid nap time and all this stuff. And like, yeah, you have structure, but all 3 of my kids are obsessed with riding in the truck.
Oh yeah.
Riding on the front of my dirt bike, you know, like, because from 6 months on, that's what they were doing.
And I mean, having a daughter, my daughter's in the garage with me all the time. She doesn't like loud noises, unfortunately. But outside of that, like, she believes that my Fraptor, my fake Raptor, is a race truck. She calls it the race truck, even though it's anything but a race truck. But like, on her birthday, Dad, you need to drive me to school and pick me up. Right. And like on the weekends, like, hey, what do you want to do? Let's go take the race truck somewhere. Let's go to the desert. Let's go do that. Like,
I mean, you can't beat that though.
Nothing better.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's frustrating when you get out there and like she's crying because she's overtired and everything else. But like when she's like, Daddy, I want to go play in the race truck right now. It's like,
did she ever tell you to drive faster in the dirt?
Oh, all the time. So she doesn't know like necessarily what whoops are and stuff, right? But we call them up and downs, right? Because like, what is this? And so now it's like every speed bump she sees, every like ditch, like, Dad, let's hit the ups and downs fast. And it's like, absolutely, kid, like we're gonna do this. And sometimes she gets scared, but like it's, to her it's the best thing. And I look back to like being a kid too. I remember one of my friends' moms was dating some guy. We went, I think like maybe up Saddleback or something, and we were in the bed of the truck. It was legal at the time, right? Because again, the 80s. But I remember that sensation being like, I still remember it, right? Like 30 some years later is like bouncing around and like, that was the coolest thing ever. And so I can only imagine like that's what my daughter's doing, right? Is like, this is cool. And
Yeah.
it's going to be those memories that she remembers forever.
Yeah. No, it's cool being able to provide whatever, if they're like, they have this like dream, Dad, go faster, whatever they're saying.
Yeah.
And you're able to do that for them.
Yeah.
I didn't really get that too much. My parents, we had a good life, but they weren't really into the desert.
Yeah.
They were really into boating, like an expensive boat. So everything was very clean, and like the whole desert scene is so different. You know, it's a lot of the same people, but
Yeah.
being able to get out in the dirt, get dirty, beat on your truck, like do some stuff that's fun, and I think not be so anal about everything.
Yeah, you don't have to be proper. You can get dirty.
Yeah.
You can stay dirty. You don't necessarily have to shower if you're in the desert, right?
Yeah, when you
Like,
get home,
it's all about
then
having
you
fun.
can clean your stuff up,
Yeah.
and you know. So like my 4-year-old, she's from 2 years old. That's all she wants to do. She sits in her car seat back there, and Dad, go faster, go faster. I'm like, if I go faster, I'm gonna break the truck, you know, like. But it's like an adrenaline rush for her, and it's like safe too for her, you know. And that's, I don't know. It's cool to be able to provide this type of life. I think it's an amazing industry to get families into,
Absolutely.
and if you're around the right people. Obviously, every industry has their niche crowds of people, but
You know, I find at least with off-road, and like I'm sure it happens in a lot of stuff, but like talking to different people, like the Kyle LeDuc thing, right? Like he's going through cancer, and everyone's giving back right now. That's huge. Like that, the off-road industry coming together. That's happened so many times throughout at least the 23 years that I've been in the industry. Is everyone comes together when there's some sort of tragedy, something going on, and I was just talking to somebody the other day about is like when you're in the desert and you see somebody broken down, you stop, right? Even if they're just hanging out, you always check on them, even though you don't know who they are. And it's not uncommon to find somebody that's broken that needs help, and then you stop whatever you're doing to help them, right? And like I haven't been in many other industries as deeply as off-road, but like the camaraderie that everyone has is killer. And like that's what I want to bring my family up into is like, you know, my best friends that all my roommates, basically everyone that I talk to today I've met through off-roading, maybe except for one friend I went to high school with or junior high with. But outside of that, you know, every single friend that I have is all through off-roading, and they're like the best people out there. Some of them are dicks, but you know, that's a different thing.
yeah, it's everywhere.
Nah, it's all my friends are great, but like the camaraderie, everyone's willing to help each other, and that's what I like. You know, that's a big thing with Clean Dezert is giving back, because this industry has given me so much fun and so much confidence in building stuff and being able to do like what I want to do. So like Clean Desert's my way of kind of, you know, giving back to everybody else, and there's a whole lot of stuff behind how we do that and why we do it. But there's nothing better than the off-road community that I've found. There's like nobody better.
Yeah, I agree. It's I feel lucky to have been kind of fallen into this because
Yeah.
it wasn't driven by my parents, you know, and I agree. The last probably 3-4 years, I've met some of the coolest people,
Yeah.
most genuine people in my life, you know. And they're all like I've obviously before that had friends over the years, but I wouldn't get the amount of phone calls that I get, like just checking on, hey, how you doing, man? Yeah, like I get calls all the time from random people in the industry just to see how you're doing, and you know, like I try and give back and do the same thing to other people.
Yeah,
you know, because
certainly.
they you put in what they put in, you know. And so, Clean Dezert, how did you come up with this idea? Like from the outside in, it looks like an organization.
I did something right. So Clean Dezert was really, you know, going back to talking about like where I came from. So started building my Ranger, caged it, and like I wanted to do my first race. We wanted to start racing. And it really turned about, again, like looking back at that era, I don't know what the initial thought was, but I remember like sometime in the mid 2000s, there was this beard shootout, and it was, if you're really old, you'll remember MDR and remember More back in the day. There was always a clash. MDR was trucks and pre-runners, at least Barstow MDR was. More was all the buggy people. and Beard Seats put on this huge race to bring all the pre-runners over to Moore. And what ended up happening was all the old guys, all the buggy racers kind of decided that they didn't like the young pre-runners, right? And they were probably right at the time, going back to what we talked about being in our early 20s, but we were hot lapping pit row in the middle of the night till like 2, 3 in the morning. Probably didn't sleep before the races. Drinking probably a little too much, although I never drank. But so the pre-runner group kind of got the stigma of like young punk kids. And we were being loud, we were being rowdy and stuff. I didn't necessarily race that, but I was doing other races at the time. And so what ended up coming out of that, it was like, I've always kind of thought of myself, because I didn't drink, I never really partied. I didn't want to be grouped as like a punk kid. And it was a little bit of a way to show the rest of the off-road group that while we're loud and annoying and building trucks and having fun, that we're responsible, right? And so we started, I think it was 2006, with the help of Jerry at Camberg and some friends and people on DR. I had this idea of like, the desert is always getting, like people are getting flack for the desert being trashed, right? And it's those off-roaders, because we're the ones that use the desert, but it's really not us. So my idea to give back and to basically say like off-roaders are good was like, let's do a cleanup. Let's clean up some stuff. So at the time I didn't really know what I was doing. Like we got a bunch of people off this forum to kind of follow the lead of like, yeah, we should do this. We picked a date. We went out to Barstow off the 247. Wasn't really Maine where we were. We said, hey, look, we're going to barbecue out there. We'll have a dumpster delivered and we're just going to start something. And I think 30 or 40 people showed up. Again, mostly friends of mine that I met through Desert Rangers. And we put on a cleanup. And the funny thing was like BLM drove by, because their main office is like 2 miles from there. We never got approval. We never told anyone. We just did it. And they kind of pulled up like, hey, what are you guys doing? And we told them, they're like, oh, cool. Keep it up. That's cool.
How many people did you have on that first one?
Like 30 or 40. And so like, that was like, oh, well, that's cool. We can do something, right? That's positive and giving back. At the time, for me, like, I think a lot of people like yourself, right? Like you wanted to start your own business or your own, something that you can say is yours. And that's what Clean Dezert was with me. It was like, I bought a single stage, screen printing machine so I could make some shirts, sell those to friends and stuff, and like get free clothing on my own because I couldn't afford stuff. Right. But it was just my way of starting something that I could do, that would be positive and give back and, bring people together, really was the whole thing. At the time, again, like it was coming off, ROR, so Rialto Off-Road Raceway, that Jen and Greg had started. They kind of shut that down, for whatever reasons. And so like there wasn't a whole lot of like events to go to other than races back in the day. So this was kind of my way of like, let's get some people together. Let's have some fun. Let's clean up. And then afterwards, let's go play in our trucks. Like, wasn't really anything more than that. And so we did that for 4 years, from 2006 to 2010. And each year it got bigger and bigger. I think 2010, we had probably around 400 people out in Barstow. I don't remember how many dumpsters we did back then, maybe like 6 or 8 or so. But my goal was at that time, again, coming from being like a pre-runner kid and I couldn't afford stuff, was like, if I can get the companies and like my friends to help support, so people like Camberg, to help support what I'm doing, we can get some raffle prizes. And everyone asked, this is our secret for Clean Dezert. At least it's not really a secret. I tell everyone because I'm not concerned about it. But my goal was to give back to all these kids. So the 20-year-olds that couldn't afford a set of shocks, couldn't afford, a set of tires or whatever, maybe a set of lights. If you give those away for free for picking up trash, people will come. Right. Yeah. And so it made me feel great that, people that couldn't afford these parts are winning it just for putting in a couple hours worth of work. Mm-hmm. And that's how we started feeding this monster of all these volunteers that always come. And really, I think the important thing is I found this untapped market, is that there's a lot of companies that do cleanups, at least that I've found throughout the years, but they're all older crowds, right? And I shouldn't say unfortunately, but a lot of them are like Jeep crowds. Like they're the responsible ones, right? They're 40 to 60 years old. They're responsible. They don't want to lose their land. They don't want to lose their trails. They're doing the hard work. And so for me, it was like, how do I tap into the 20-year-olds, right? Because they're the generation, and they're the ones that are out here using it a lot. There's nobody really doing this with the pre-runner race truck crowds. And that was where I was at the time. And so it was like an untapped market for me. And with so many people on DR, promotion, right? It's like before social media, promotion on there was like, it was easy to get people to follow. You say, we have all this stuff, we're going to feed you food. Everyone in the industry is going to be there. So everyone follows. And it just turned into these massive cleanups that most companies can't even come close to touching. And that's
I think it's amazing trying to hit that younger crowd, like this next generation of people coming up, like setting that precedence with them, like this can be cool doing this, and
that's my goal now. That's where we started, was like, because we were that age and I was just hitting the same demographic that I lived in, or as a part of. But now that I'm older, because again, I took 10 years off and I came back in 2019. Now my goal is to still feed into the 20-year-olds as well as the younger children, because they're the ones, at least in my own mind, my thinking is that when I was 20, I didn't know better. And there's probably times where I left trash in the desert. I'm not going to lie. Like, nobody taught me, right? Mm-hmm. There was nobody setting an example. And it's easy to say, like, oh, you should have known better, but you don't think about it. And if other people are doing it, you don't think about it, right? And so now with Clean Dezert is more so like, let's get the brand out in front of people. Let's make it a trend, right, to do this. And other people are now going to see it and realize, oh yeah, we should never be doing that. We shouldn't trash the desert. That shouldn't happen. But unless somebody's necessarily helping you guide you down that road, it's something easy to miss, right? And so that's why... Well,
for instance, burning pallets.
Yeah, we've all done it.
Like Dirt Life Media out there in Glamis, pulling out all those nails. Like as a kid growing up doing that stuff, yeah, I would just put pallets in the ground, burn them because they look cool.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And you wake up the next morning, leave.
Yeah.
And watching what you guys do, like his pile of nails that he had in that pool or whatever.
Oh, it's amazing.
It's crazy, you know. And that's what we're all driving over, the glass, all this stuff that is in Ocotillo. Dude, King of Hammers, trash.
Oh, is unreal.
How do we tap into that? I know they do there's like a small group of people that went out and tried to clean up afterwards.
We did. So as part of Clean Dezert, I mean, it's hard because it's during the week. I have a corporate job I need to be at.
Yeah.
I took a few days off. We went and helped in the morning. There's stuff to be said, and I try to be a little bit reserved. I know they got a ton of flack for it. I'd be interested, before we can find a solution, I need to know more about how all that happens, because I think we can point out there's some issues, right? We were only able to clean out outside of the course in the mornings, and the night before, everyone's on the course drinking, right? Not the people driving per se, but you go to, I think it was Chocolate Thunder we were at a couple nights, but it's marked off here. The course is down here. Everyone's on the rocks in between. Mm-hmm. But the next morning, we're not allowed down there to clean. We can only clean
beer cans all over the place.
And so you're not able to pick up where the trash is. That's an issue. The thing that I know everyone gave them a hard time is you guys left all this trash. I would be interested, what their permitting process is with the BLM, because I would have to believe that the BLM is saying you can't leave that stuff out there. And so I don't know if they got a bunch of flack, even though it was going to be cleaned up afterwards. I don't know that process. I'd love to understand that a little bit more. But I know from the stuff when we helped MIP 400 in the Martellis up in Vegas, and one of my good friends, Jason, I think his role's race director or something in there. But talking to him, they've told me that they have to go out after the races and fix lines that people have driven on that aren't actual part of the course or anything else, to make it look like it's not a new trail. So if they're doing that after the race, I would find it hard to believe that the BLM out in Johnson Valley isn't saying like, look, you have to leave it better than you started with.
Yeah.
So I don't know how all that happened, but if it didn't happen, my suggestion would be on the back end of it all is a couple weeks after the event, let's throw a huge cleanup, right? Let's, and maybe, at the expense of some of the sponsors and King of the Hammers, because ultimately it's up to them to be a good steward of the desert that they're making money on. But you can't do it the weekend after. You can't do it at the event. Everyone's focused on racing, but maybe it's 3 weeks after, maybe it's a month after, however that works out. But throw a huge event. It can be done. It can be done easily.
And it'd probably be a big event.
And it would probably be a huge event,
Yeah.
right? Especially like you look at their vendor row, like, these are all suggestions that somebody could say they're horrible, but you have all those vendors, like take a little bit of merch from all that, right? Like have everybody donate something and throw that into a huge raffle. I don't know what King of the Hammers charges for anything, but charge an extra $5 or $10.
Expensive.
Yeah. An extra $5 or $10 and throw that into putting on a cleanup. Like it can be done. And I think it can be huge, but I think that's what you have to do is you have to promote it as something afterwards. You have to promote it, all this stuff. And I mean, rightfully so.
Like King of Hammers would have to promote it throughout their week. Like,
yeah.
Hey, in 3 weeks we got the Clean Dezert.
And it's hard. I mean, there's a lot of people coming from out of town that would never come back out.
Yeah.
But if you make it worthwhile for the locals and the rest of the group that lives in Southern California, I think it could be done super easy. I don't think it would be. I mean, if I can bring 500 people, I have to believe somebody with the reach and the pull of King of the Hammers can make 1,000 people out there. And let me tell you, we can do 2019, our first time back in 9 years, we had 750 people. We filled 12 dumpsters in 4 hours. Like that's a lot of pull. You put 1,000 people out in the desert for 4 hours, they're gonna clean up some shit.
So I didn't know you took a break.
Yeah.
So you did it for a few years, you said in the beginning.
Yeah, so we did it from 2006 to 2010. If you're old like me, there was an incident in 2010. There was a huge race. Were you involved in off-road much during then?
No.
So for 1450 racing, which is everything that we did, the biggest event every year was the MDR night race in Lucerne off Bessemer Mine Road, right? I think we started racing that in 2006. We did it 4 or 5, I don't know, a bunch of times. I know we didn't do it in 2010, but as a part of that, it was an amazing race, the biggest race in off-road, like pre-runners you would ever see. So entries you would have for the 1450 class, somewhere around 50 to 70 trucks every year, right? Like anybody, if they were going to race, was that race. It was at night, is in the middle of summer. It was awesome. What that also did was there was a certain portion of the course. It was like 3 or 5 miles in. The course made a hard left, and they called it the rock pile. It was in the middle of all these rocks, and it turned into the party spot. Like anybody in off-road pre-runners, this group was there, thousands of people. And so 2008 and 2009, I myself and some people on Desert Rangers organized to bring in snow fencing and section off that portion of the course because it was too dangerous to go through there at speed with that many people. It was like Zoo Road at night. And so, we talked to MDR and stuff, and they said, it's not a big deal. So we just took it upon ourselves. The 1450 racers took it upon ourselves, put up snow fencing to block people, to keep them off the course. 2010 came around, and unfortunately, I was out of town. I wasn't even going to go to the race. I flew in that morning. My buddy talked me into towing the truck up there. We got to the rock pile to spectate that year, 20 minutes before the race. And I forget how many trucks in, maybe the 3rd to 5th truck in, somewhere in there, wadded up bad, killed 9-10 people. And as a result of that, I basically stepped out of Clean Dezert. I stepped out of the off-road industry basically for 9 years. I was scared that if something happened at my event, I could lose my house, my family. B, seeing that tragedy, 15 feet from me was not anything I ever wanted to see again.
Yeah.
And it took the fun out of the desert or off-road for me. And so, yeah, I took 9 years off and just said, like, you know, look, I don't need to be a part of any of this. It changed the whole trajectory of off-road racing as well. Like, and it was hard at that time because I got sequestered for depositions for the trial that was happening because we put up snow fencing and they found out who I was, wanted to know all this info, and it really scared the crap out of me. But off-road racing changed that day tremendously because, like I said, we had 50 to 70 trucks just in one class, and everyone was there. Off-road racing before that was a major party, and I've been to a few races since, and it's interesting now. Like, you go, at least the last couple times I've been to a race, like you go to the spots that used to be like the wall out in Lucerne. You could go in like the mid 2000s if there was a race happening there. The night before, there'd be hundreds of people partying and everyone's trucks, and people would be jumping. It'd be a great time. We went, maybe 5 years ago, and we showed up out there to see if anybody was out there. Like, we just wanted to go to the race for fun, but we're like, hey, let's go see like if anybody's out there, because that's how it was years and years ago. And there was nobody there at first. We got out, just to relax a little bit, and it was like midnight. Nobody was there, and then 2 pre-runners came by, and we were laughing because they were old guys like us, right? And we were all, remembering the old days of like, the parties that used to happen out there. And so like racing has just totally changed. It seems more serious. You have less what feels like grassroots. It's become safer, which is great. But it's just a different feeling now. And so, yeah, I took a long stint off. And we came back in 2019. I'm not quite sure why, truthfully. I think that part in my life, like I'd had my kid, gone through some health issues with my heart. And so I came back and I was like, I was kind of getting stir crazy, not doing anything. And I decided that like I had this health scare that was pretty bad. And it was like, I want to do something that like is meaningful to me, that like, maybe at some point my name would have like a legacy behind it, right? Like if I died, because I came close to it, it was like people would be like, hey, like Adam did so-and-so, right? And so for part of it was just like, I wanted to come back and be a part of something. And, off-road was so great to me the years before. And I had all these friends. It's like, dude, let's bring Clean Dezert back. Like, let's see what happens. And
I want to say something real quick. So you talking about the legacy. So I had a really bad drinking problem for years, right? And I'm almost 4 years sober.
That's killer, man.
But the month 1 or 2, when I first got sober, some guy asked me that was helping me out with my sobriety. He asked me, he's like, if you died today, what's your legacy left behind? What are your kids going to talk about? What are their kids going to talk about from great grandpa or whatever, And it hit me because, you just kind of plow through life with not knowing what you're doing, all this stuff going on. And at the time, if I would have just passed away at that point in time, it wasn't a good legacy left behind, And to me, that kind of hit me. People are going to forget about you once you die anyways. You're dead, But your kids, I would love my kids to remember me as a loving father that did as much as I could for them and with them, and that was present,
Yeah.
And I just wanted to say that because I relate to that. That was it's such a simple question, but it's a powerful question,
It is. And I don't think I've really talked a whole lot about that. I was telling my wife about it today. I have now, everyone says when you create a business and stuff that you need to forecast and you need to have dreams and aspirations and stuff. And one of them for me within maybe the last 3-4 years, right? I get these emails from the Off-Road Hall of Fame, right? And let's be honest, I'm not racing. I wasn't fast when I raced before. It's an ongoing joke with me and all my friends. I was never fast. I just did it and it was fun. But it's how do you leave that legacy? And it's I don't know. Maybe there's something here with Clean Desert. Like it's taking traction. Like people are noticing. Like how cool would it be to be like the Off Road Hall of Fame? Not for racing because again, it's never going to happen. But like, can I make it with this other thing? And for me, it's drive and direction of what I want to do with Clean Desert. You know, there's a whole bunch of selfish reasons. That's one of them though. Is like, I don't want, you know, because I almost died and like I had a heart attack. I had quadruple bypass surgery at 38, and you had a drinking problem. I had probably an eating problem. Still do. But it's really, you know, bad genes and everything else. But like you said, like I almost lost it all. Like then what? Like I want my
Dude,
daughter.
How are you today?
Well, I should stop eating more, but that's hard. I mean, for now, I'm great.
Food's difficult.
Oh, I love food. I love food.
Especially when you got guys like Ferns driving around cooking food for
No
all
doubt,
of us.
right? But like you talk about kids, right? Like I want my daughter to have a legacy, right? Like to say that like my dad did something.
Yeah.
And not that it's bad if you don't do anything, but that's a little bit of the drive that I have is like, you know, I want my daughter to remember her dad as like somebody that did something on his own. And so again, where my normal job is great and like I get recognition for that, like I have a lot of clients and like I'm a well-respected professional in that. It's not mine. I work for somebody on a daily basis. Clean Desert's mine, and I have a team of the best friends that will jump when I say jump and follow me through some really dumb ideas for no pay just because they want to be a part of it. And so I applaud them every single day that I ask them to do something. But for me, like I want to be something, right? And so Clean Desert's my something.
I relate to that a lot.
A little sappy, but it is.
No, it's true. That's for me the film stuff. That's honestly filming became a thing for me from being sober.
Yeah.
I was a musician for years growing up, and when I got sober, like I spent so many hours a day drinking before, and then when I got sober, like a year after, I did a bunch of like personal work on my life, and then I was like sitting there one day, like twiddling my thumbs. I'm like, dude, I need to do something. Like I don't play music anymore. I quit playing music because of alcohol.
Yeah.
Like I just gave up a lot of stuff in life. I basically just did the bare minimum. I did my job, took care of the kids. I thought I was taking care of my kids, you know, just did the bare minimum. So I had a very strong relationship with my kids. Work was going good, but I had these like 4 to 6 hours a day that I was going nuts.
Yeah.
And like, then somebody was like, "Hey, dude, you should come out." When you know the couple years that pit bikes were like super popular.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're like, "Hey, we're having a big ride day in the hills with pit bikes." I'm like, "Dude, I don't we go watch pit bikes," and he's like, "No, just come out." Went out there, took like a couple dumb videos on my phone, and then I went home and I stayed up till like 3 a.m. trying to figure out how to edit these videos off my phone.
I feel for you because I tried to do that stuff, and my God, like the amount of time it takes.
Dude, it's
to
so
learn,
time consuming.
It's crazy.
I was just YouTubing, and all these people are like, "Hey, yeah, you got to use Adobe Premiere. That's the best." I'm like, "Okay, that's the best. Cool." Download that, paid for that. Couldn't figure out how to open it up.
Yeah.
I'm like, "Hey, let's YouTube that." Anyway, so just hours and hours of just figuring out how to do it, and then like mixing it to music gave me the same creative thing in my brain that music used to.
Yeah.
So I was like, "Yeah, I want to maybe do this again," and I just started doing it, and all of a sudden I like fell in love with it because it's a very like healthy addiction, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's your own, right?
Yeah, and you're
you get
creating
to own
something,
it, yeah.
and you get to go like mingle with people and talk to people, and then you get to go like take a memory that they have, but they're not really paying attention to the memory because they're behind a helmet or whatever they're doing. Then they get to watch it back, and they're like, "Dude, that's so sick," you know, like. So I get that, like creating something that's yours.
Yeah.
But you're sharing it with a bunch of people who respect it and want to be a part of it, you know?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, and so that's the biggest thing is like how, you know, you talk about like sharing the stoke or whatever it is. It's like, how do you get everyone else to follow your crazy ideas and have a great time? And, you know, what we found with Clean Desert, the neat thing is that there's no downside to it really at the end of the day. It's very hard to have downside, right? So you come out to the events, you typically get free food. No one's going to say no to that. You get free raffle tickets for working. So basically you can win a ton of, like, we raffle off $20,000 to $30,000 in product, right? So no one's going to say no to that. You're going to walk home with, most people walk home with something, and they're excited, right? You get to hang out with a bunch of like-minded people. And I can't tell you how many times, like, or how many people I know that are like, oh, I met so-and-so. I met my best friend at a Clean Dezert event, right? So it's going back to the ROR days where you have all these like-minded people, and like, especially with new people trying to get into the sport, like, how do you touch somebody like James from Terricker or Wilkie, right? Like, a lot of times they're out driving, but like, how do you see these people in person, right?
Yeah, it's
or
a way to meet,
converse with
like,
them.
not knowing the industry, the off-road celebrities, and then you get to go to these, like, a Clean Desert event, and like you'll see like these guys out there and be able to meet them. I mean, I remember before filming, I would look at like Wilkie or random guys and be like, dude, that guy's like top of the chain off-road, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
They meet him and they're like the most, you're like, dude, that's the coolest guy.
Yeah, they're
in
all,
the world,
everyone's
you know?
down to earth, right? And
I think it's cool for people to be able to go to your events and like meet All American Sender or like these random dudes out
exactly.
there.
And so like, that's cool to me because like, as much as, I put on events, I'm talking to the microphone, talking to everyone, I'm actually pretty shy in person. Like, I won't go up to somebody. In fact, at Fiesta Island, right, I met Eric, SoCal Suspension, and like, I hate being the person that like bugs people, right? But then you start talking to people, and like the coolest people in the world.
You're like, I'm actually not bugging them. So
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And here I am, like 40 years old. So imagine like you're a 20-year-old and like the same thing, and nobody, right? I know some people. It shouldn't be that big of a deal. But you're 20, you know nobody. Like, putting on these events gives people that opportunity to meet more people, and I think that's important in our industry. And so you meet all these people, you win free stuff, you get free food. A lot of times everyone's going to use their trucks afterwards, so then it turns into like a free show,
Yeah.
right? Which is killer. Nobody wants to, like, there's never a bad day unless you're All American Center and
Let's go to
taco and
Devil's
pepperoni.
Slide
Yeah.
and watch him break his truck.
Yeah.
He'll watch this too. So
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
And outside of that, like, everyone's having a good time. So like, and then you get the enjoyment on the next day of like, hey, I did something positive. I gave back, right? Which a lot of people, I don't think, understand how great that is. But like, I do all these events, right? I don't get paid for anything. I don't really need to get paid for anything. I mean, granted, it'd be great, but I don't, like, this isn't my livelihood by any means. And so it keeps it fun. But watching people win stuff, watching people have a good time, and then knowing the impact that we made on the back end, like, that's amazing. Like, I feel great. Even though I'm worn out, I'm tired, I'm probably telling everybody I don't want to do it again. Like, I'm so tired from, weeks and months leading up to it. But then you look at like all the positive aspect of it all, and then you hear these great stories. Like, that's a win. Like, there's literally nothing better than hearing that, other than maybe having kids, right? And so it's hard to not want to keep doing it. And thankfully, since 2009, like, the industry's changed for us. Where prior, like 2006 to 2010, like, we were doing it, we were growing, but something to do with now 2019 to now, the industry, the world's changed a lot, right? Electric vehicles, even though we're all pushing back, nobody really wants them, whatever it is. But like, the green movement is turning huge.
yeah.
And people are being more cognizant of like trash and everything else. And there's a lot of companies willing to give back. And so that exposure that we're getting now is tremendous compared to what we got years ago.
Yeah, I think one big thing too for you guys that are cleaning up the desert is, I mean, our deserts, they're trying to shut our deserts down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's like a big thing, a big chunk that they can take. They can't fight us with, like, oh, you guys trash the desert. Well, we're constantly doing desert cleanups.
Yeah.
To clean up the mess that people made that we didn't even do it.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think it's today's life right now with how the government is and people trying to shut stuff down and take off-roading away and change our green stickers. And like, there's so many laws that they're trying to put in place. I think it's huge for our industry that you guys are helping everybody with that,
I mean, we're just a small part in that too. Like, as I'm learning through the industry and all these nonprofits and stuff, like, I've had no education on how to do all this, right? Like, so I'm fumbling my way through all this, trying to figure out, all the nonprofits. We are a nonprofit. We made that happen right in the beginning of COVID because we had some downtime.
You became an actual
Yeah,
nonprofit.
yeah,
That's
we're
cool.
an actual nonprofit, so people can donate to us. It's a tax write-off, which is great. But that was a stepping stone for us. We couldn't grow unless we did that, so it had to happen. But it's interesting because, like, I want to stay within my my forte, which is putting on these events. Right? There's a lot of nonprofits that are set up more so to like fundraise. Like, we just worked with San Diego Off Road Coalition. They're a great group. They're looking to get people in Sacramento to fight land closures and get into the politics. I have no desire to do that. It doesn't sound sexy. It doesn't sound like
Yeah.
fun to me. Sounds very, behind the scenes,
Time consuming.
and time consuming,
Yeah.
and difficult. It's not my forte. My forte is wanting to have a lot of fun, wanting to put together an event where everyone's having fun. And so far I've worked through that and it's worked great. And so, there's all these different aspects of what everyone can do. We're just a small cog in it. And luckily, again, as we are functioning through it with social media, like, publicity has been good for us. We have a lot of sponsors and a lot of companies that want to help us grow. And so it's just taking off, which is amazing, more so than I would have thought. But I think it's a transition in our world right now too. Like you said, we're losing land all the time. Oceano Dunes, like, they're doing a killer job up there trying to keep that land open. Like, we don't want to lose land. Like, once it's gone, you're never getting it back. And it's already, you go to Glamis, we're losing land there. It's getting crowded. Ocotillo Wells, same thing. And so it's, this is just our small way to kind of give back
Yeah.
and show that off-roaders aren't the problem. We've never been the problem. Especially with trash, a lot of it is illegal dumping, but we're not the problem. We're actually here to help. And it's sad, we've had these conversations that, Sierra clubs and like hiking groups and stuff are trying to take away land for motorized vehicles. Like, I understand they have a different agenda than we have, but we all want public land. Like, we need to focus more on keeping the land open.
It's a playground for everybody. Everybody
Then
has a
fighting
different type of playground that
Yeah.
they like to play on,
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, I get like vegetation. They talk about vegetation, like, oh, we drive over stuff. But how many plants are you actually driving over when you're driving through the desert? You're gonna hit one once in a while.
Yeah, I hear all these studies that, like, turning the dirt will grow plants. I don't know anything about that, truthfully. I don't want to know anything about that. Like,
Yeah.
I just want to be able to have fun.
Yeah.
Right? Like everyone, like, we take our trucks out. We spend how much money on building a truck just to have fun? Mm-hmm. Very little people get rich off it. If you're racing, at least when I was in 1450, I spent way more money, right? Like, I don't even think I ever won anything other than like a plaque, right? But you spend all this money just to have fun. Like, my agenda is to make sure people are having fun and we're keeping that land open, because once it's gone, then your kids, my daughter, they're not going to have anything, right?
No,
like,
and
that's sad.
we are so fortunate to be able to drive. I don't know how far it is to Orange County, but for me, an hour and a half to go to Ocotillo.
Well, I'm in Oceanside, so hour and a half.
Oh, you're in Oceanside.
Yeah,
That's
I
right.
work in Orange County, but
Yeah,
yeah.
so you can drive an hour and a half and go spend a whole weekend smashing around the desert.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Oh yeah, yeah. And so, like, that's my goal. And so we've we spend more time in Ocotillo now. We're actually out there a lot. We started doing a cleanup in Ocotillo. State Parks called and said, hey, and this is kind of a reoccurring theme that we're seeing now, is like, hey, we put on these cleanups. We have like 30 or 40 people show up. You guys have 400 or 500. What the heck is going on? How can you help us? And so we started doing, the last 2 years, we've done Ocotillo Wells cleanup on President's Day. And that keeps growing and it's becoming bigger. Hopefully we'll do another one next year. But it's all about, giving back. Because we spend time in Ocotillo, we want to do that. A lot of people ask, like, they thought I was from Barstow. Why Barstow? Is because that's where the old MDR races were, and that's where we started. And Barstow's great. Like, there's food, there's hotels, there's gas, all within like a mile or two of where we are. So it's a great area to go. Lots of trash out there, unfortunately. But we're always kind of looking at like where else we can help and do stuff. But the one thing you kind of talked about, like what are the events consist of? It takes us 3 to 4 months to plan events, right? To get enough sponsors, to fund the event, to get product, to get all the raffle stuff. And so, desert season's only 6 months. So we really only have the opportunity to maybe do 2 events a year while we're working all full-time jobs. So where we would like to, look at doing a bunch more events, I don't have the physical time unless we reduce all of our events to smaller stuff. And I'm not willing to kind of change what isn't broken.
Are you guys looking at maybe expanding into some small? I know you guys did like the Fast Lab UTV. You weren't there.
Yeah, I had my team out there.
So what does your team consist of right now?
So my team consists of, that's a great question. So it's really me. I do probably about 80% of everything. I have a couple really good friends. So Corey, he helps get sponsors for us. He's really good at, pinging people and reaching out and stuff. And the hard part is we're segregated. So I live in Oceanside. Most of my friends or people that help live up in Phelan or right at the top of the Cajon Pass. So it's like a 2-hour drive if we're going to meet or if we're going to do anything together. So that makes it difficult. My buddy Trevor does a lot of merch at the shows for us. And then my buddy Hoseby and Steve basically at most of the events, they're there at the Fast Lab cleanup that you guys did. They set up a booth, but they're there helping direct traffic for us. And so really, and there's a couple other people that help here and there, but there's really like 5 or 6 of us that put the events on. And then we pull as needed. So my friends at Bad Lines Good Times, we'll pull them for Barstow. They barbecue. So they, full on cook tacos, rice, beans, feed 500 to 600 people, which is more of an undertaking than probably the whole cleanup. Yeah. No, they do a killer job. And they want to give back. They're super into giving back to the desert, making sure that we don't lose land and stuff. So that's their part that they help us with. But outside of that, it's just 5 or 6 of us that just donate time. It's hard. We're always looking for, it's hard for me to manage different people because I'm not paying anyone. So it's really hard to ask people to do stuff. The next couple of years is going to be interesting because as we grow, like we take on more work, right? And so this last weekend, we worked with San Diego Off-Road Coalition to do a fundraising event at the Lakeside Rodeo Ground.
You were on the news, weren't you?
Yeah, we did 2 news spots down there. Cool. Which is cool for me, right? Because like again, leaving a legacy, like show my kid, like, hey, I was on the news this morning.
Daddy's on the news.
Yeah, like it's little things that like people that have been on the news before. It's like, oh, no big deal. To me, is like, dude, check this out. Like semi-famous, even though I'm not, right? But like that event, setting that up, we had 55, 60 vendors, like 50 display vehicles, all this stuff. Like I was putting in probably 30 hours a week above my 40-hour a week job, which sometimes is more. And so stuff like that becomes difficult. And I really need to look at like where we're spending time in doing that because that's hard. I missed my daughter's karate. I missed her soccer. At one point, I didn't see her for almost an entire week because I get home and then go into my spare bedroom, which is my office, and start working as soon as I got home from work. And so that one took a lot out of me. And so we're going to look at like trying to figure out how we can divide some of that maybe a little bit more. But it's a lot of work. And I think that's the hard thing is like, it's work of passion. Like, I know a lot of people are like, how do you do it? I want to start my own. But you have to be willing to put in some time.
Yeah. So if people want to get involved with you, like what's the best way to reach out to you besides like, is Instagram your main point of contact or?
Yeah. I mean, again, it's like, so I'm learning social media, right? Like Facebook for us, we're on there. It doesn't do much. Instagram's pretty much where we do everything. Like 95% of any contact on there is myself. So you'll probably see a ton of stuff misspelled because it's not my forte. Not a great speller, but my team will always go back and usually fix those for me. But Instagram is probably the best place to hit up. I try to respond to everybody. You can go to our website, although I don't know how many people go to websites anymore, but cleandesert.org.
I feel
Desert
like
spelled with a
you
Z.
really have to drive a website through social media
Yeah,
for
yeah.
people to go to that website.
Without a doubt. And then people can always email me as well, adam@cleandesert.org. And I mean, if they want to get involved, really, like right now, we're basically just, come out to our events and support us.
Yeah.
Buy some merch. We sell merch online or at our events. Help support us that way. And help tell other people, spread the word that, right, like this is something that we should be concerned about. With new people entering the sport daily with UTVs, which is kind of like this new whole demographic, probably no different than when pre-runners started, but you have this whole new demographic of people, and some of them could use a little education on making sure that they're picking up trash. Some of them are great about it, but just spread the word. My goal really at the end of the day is if people have, whether it's a Clean Desert shirt, hat, sticker, whatever, we sell second trash bags, like all this stuff. If you see somebody in camp with that, like that is obviously somewhat concerned about cleaning up the desert, maybe you'll think twice about throwing a beer can on the ground.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's my goal, is like just to spread this word of like, hey, we need to make sure our deserts, we need to be good stewards. Right. And I think truthfully, like when I look at people that use the desert, off-roaders are actually pretty darn good. There's some other groups, and I don't really want to put them on blast, but there's some other groups that haven't learned that yet. And so you go to some parts of the desert that are being recreated by other things than motorsports, and it's trashed. It's not good. And so, that's the biggest thing, is like, just promote it. We don't really, as of right now, like, we don't need internal help with time and stuff unless like somebody has a very specific niche ability to help us with stuff. But I'm always like, my whole thing is learning. So, I talked about why I do this and some of the stuff that's very personal, like why I want to do it. I want to learn more, right? I want to learn how to run a business. Like I want to learn about social media that I don't know about. I want to learn like what makes people tick and all this other stuff. And so like, if you have something that you can help me with, like I want to learn. That's a big thing. Like I think when we stop learning, then we become stagnant.
Yeah.
It's not great for us.
Yeah, I did construction for 16 years without doing media. And then the last 2 years, I started my own construction company. So learning business.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I had a business partner. We did pretty good. But in the meantime, I was also doing like the 30 hours a week of trying to learn how to do media. And then now we're here doing media full time. It's crazy. I'm like that. Like 16 years, I became very stagnant with construction. I started from a trench to my own company. And then like, what's after that? You know? And it wasn't a very, it's so hard doing something daily that doesn't really do anything for anybody else. It's a very, not selfish, but it's just you doing your own thing. You go home, not dealing with anybody. And I think having the opportunity to do like what you guys do, what I get to do, just being out with people in general, after these last couple of years of like COVID and like the separation of humanity for a while, we were all kind of pushed off from each other. I think it's wonderful to be able to come out, and I feel like these events are just rapidly getting faster or bigger and bigger. It seems like, with Terra Crew and you guys, these pre-runner meets, I mean, they're like blowing up. It seems like the last couple of years.
The cool thing that I've learned internally a little bit, because again, being very kind of introverted and not wanting to expand, I'm trying to make more of a point to go to more events, right? Get Clean Dezert a little bit more in people's face so they see us, like brand recognition type stuff. The coolest thing that I'm learning out of a lot of this is like whether it's working with Terra Crew, Down for Mobbin, Dirt Designs, Gravel Kings, like all these people, they all want to take everyone with them, right? And it's really neat to be a part of that, of like, having different companies at all these different events, and then you basically become like comrades out there, right? And so like, even though we're not using our trucks as much, it's all these people you make friends with at every single event that now, like for our events, I'm gonna be like, hey guys, come along, right?
Yeah.
Come set up a booth, come do this, like let's get some more exposure for everyone. And like everyone's willing to work together to do that. And it's kind of like I don't know, at least for me, a new wave of how I see the off-road industry, right? Back in the early 2000s, like, not that there was a clash, but you kind of always felt like, well, there's this company and this company, right? And you had to pick sides or something along those lines. But it's neat now to see all these people working together and like trying to grow the industry as a whole together, right? And taking people along with them for the ride, which is much appreciated with us, right? Like, you know, sometimes cleaning up trash isn't the most sexy thing in the world.
No.
And sometimes like it could be very easy of just like, well, I don't want to spend my time doing that. I'd rather go do something that's more fun. But we have a lot of great companies that want to involve us to help us grow because it's important. And I think for me, at least, I have to learn that a little bit is like what we're doing we're not a normal company, right? Like I don't necessarily have to sell merchandise to grow, right? Like a lot of companies have to sell kits, whatever it is.
Your overhead's not.
Yeah. And mine is we're doing something good and something that makes you feel good and something that's good for the environment. And it's a whole different sales, right? Mm-hmm. And the neat thing is it's become easy for us because people want to take us along with them because it is something positive rather than like, oh, I got to sell so many shirts and like get my name out. It's no, come with us because you're doing something good and we want to support the good in what you do. And so it opens up a lot of doors for us as well, I think.
It's cool. When's your guys' next event?
We're working on right now November 11th in Barstow, off Barstow, Maine. So that's kind of our bread and butter event each year. That's where we'll have 500 plus people typically. At least that's what we shoot for. I already know Bad Lines Good Times is going to start cooking for us. Probably have 10, 12 dumpsters. Talk to Terra Crew about being out there.
For vendors, for other companies that may be listening, I know we'll probably want to get involved. So how do they like get involved to be a vendor at one of your events?
Really, so we have like lists of companies we work with because we've been doing it so long. But anybody that's interested, go ahead and hit us up on social media or my email. We'll put together, we're going to have sponsor packages. So there's different levels depending on what companies want to do. Some companies come in with money to help fund the event. Some people come in with raffle prizes that are really neat. We work with everyone because ultimately, the more stuff we get, the better it is for the experience of all the volunteers. And I want to share that stoke with everyone. And so we work really hard on, trying to work with all these great companies that want to give back to make the event happen. And we're always looking at different ways to brand it and to make stuff happen. And so, yeah, if anybody's interested, hit us up. I'm really a one-track mind, so I just finished Lakeside Saturday, right? Just back at work. And now I have to start on November. So I'll work from now till November 11th to put it together. And then as soon as that ends, I'm starting on Octia Wells on the next one because we'll do that President's Day in spring. So yeah.
Which was a fun event. I went to that one. I think that's that was the first Clean Dezert event actually. We talked about it for I feel like a year before I actually made it to one. But it was cool. I took my son out there. He was out there helping pick up trash.
Did he have a good time?
Yeah, he had a blast.
Did he win? So one of the big things that we're trying to do, did he win anything at the kids raffle?
Well,
hopefully?
he made me look like a bad dad. I took him home before.
You are a bad dad. Sorry, but that we talk about getting older. And so like we do raffles. Now we do raffles for kids, right? Because like I'm a parent now. Like I realize like, oh, people have
involve
kids,
everybody,
right? Involve everyone. And so that's a big thing too, is like, we usually have a sponsor that will pony up and give us anywhere from $500 to $1,000. We just spend it all on kids' toys. Cool. And like talk about a good feeling watching all these kids win stuff. Like that's how you get them involved.
Who had the little race cars
from us
at that President's Day event?
It may have been Falcon donated a bunch.
Like they were handing out like a raffle ticket, and then the kids would walk around to the table and grab one of their own cars.
Oh, that was us. So
the Hot Wheels.
Yeah, so we try any of our events. We'll buy a couple hundred Hot Wheels just to make sure every kid gets something.
It's rad.
Because again, like that kid 5 to 10 years old, 12 years old, whatever it is, right? Like if you can get it in their mind that, hey, I went to a cleanup and I got something, and then like correlate that with cleaning
I
up.
got a toy and I didn't have to do anything.
Yeah.
I mean, I picked up some trash, but
Yeah. So that for us has been a big hit. It draws people to our stuff, but just a way to like stoke out the little kids
Yeah.
because like we were all little kids. We'd love that stuff, you know?
yeah. No, that's rad, dude. All right, well, I appreciate you coming down, dude. Is there anything else you want to bring up or discuss about what you guys have going on? Any future plans?
No, right now it's just focusing on growing, seeing what we can do, working with new companies, and we just want feedback, really.
Do you guys have?
Fine.
So you do YouTube, or you do Instagram, you do Facebook. You said,
Yeah, yeah.
You guys have your website. Is it Clean Dezert? How do you have that spelled out on all your?
So Clean Dezert, spelled with a Z, .org.
Is that consistent through the platforms?
Instagram is just Clean Dezert, no dash, no org. Website, cleandesert.org. Facebook is Clean Dezert.
And YouTube?
No YouTube. I don't have time. Like I would love, we have some friends that kind of help with some media stuff. I would love to spend more time with that and like get into it. Like I bought a drone to take some photos and do stuff. I just don't have, there's not enough time in the day. There's just, it doesn't work for me.
Dude, YouTube is a beast.
Yeah.
It's a whole different
a
animal.
lot of time spent on it, right?
Yeah.
I'd love to because like I see how that flows and how the traffic works, and still a novice to all this stuff. Just my forte is setting up events. It's not editing. It's not being, I don't have like a very like graphic oriented mind, like designs and like making stuff that like is cool. Like that's just not me.
Yeah, but I feel like for like a full day of a Clean Desert event, just having like a vlog
Yeah.
might even be cool, like having a camera going around talking to the kids, picking up trash, and like just getting from like kids to older people, like their experience through the day of how it's going, you know?
What are you doing at?
That's what I'm saying. I know a filmer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's something I struggle with is trying to figure that out. Again, like, hey, who wants to work for free? You know, type stuff.
I mean, I've only told you like 5 times. I'll do it.
That's the biggest thing is like, I mean, obviously social media, like it's sad. This San Diego Off-Road Coalition thing that we just did, all these vendors, I took one photo and it was of my daughter. And like, it's the last thing on my mind is to go around and like do social media. Because I have a hard time with it, truthfully. Like, I feel like I'm older. Like, I don't know like what's great. And like, so I do most of our social media on Instagram, but like, it's not my forte. And truthfully, if I could say like, if somebody else could do it all, I'd be so stoked, because it's not like we spend a lot of time, like, you know, with our vendors sponsor graphics and stuff. And like, it takes away from a lot of the other stuff that like I really want to spend my time on with Clean Dezert growing it. So you asked if there's something I could use help with. Like if there's any kids out there that like want to help me with social media, that would be killer. Because like
I think it'd be a good like entry level type thing to get in and get your feet wet with it. I think personally what you guys have going on social media, I told you in the beginning, you guys look like an organization. And I think that is like the feel that it needs to have.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It doesn't look like a one person lifestyle page. It doesn't look like an influencer page. Like it looks like a organization. I think the way you guys do it is good. I think media wise, obviously you don't have time to be putting out high quality content, you know?
Yeah.
But like the YouTube stuff, like, yeah, I'd be 100% down to help out with
That'd be cool.
putting together like a vlog day of it. And it would just be, that would be your consistency on YouTube. It'd be a couple videos a year.
Yeah, of just
that
events.
are just showing the big events, you know?
I think, I mean, there's some impact with that. Like, it's hard. I try to, you know, at some of our bigger events kind of show like before and after. And like, we do have some people that help. Like, I con my wife into taking photos for us. Just because like, I want people to see like the before and after, like how much trash. Like, I tell a lot of people, you know, they ask like, oh, you go clean up, like, you know, what's that like? They don't understand. It's actually like everyone has a lot of fun, right? Like the people that are out in Barstow that find a boat to bring back or find like this gnarly thing and they either load it in the truck or drag it back or whatever it is, they all have smiles on their face.
Yeah.
It's like it's an award all on their own, right? Just
Who could find the craziest piece of
yeah,
trash
yeah.
out there?
Oh,
you know?
totally. So that's actually really neat. But with that, like you tell people like, oh, we just pulled out 10 to 12 40 cubic yard dumpsters. Like people don't understand how much trash
It's a lot.
that is. That is a lot. Like when the dumpsters get dropped off, I've had a couple of my friends that haven't been helping us that long. They'll like 9 o'clock. They're like, Adam, you're crazy. We're only going to fill 2 of these dumpsters, especially in Barstow, right? I'm like, no, no, no. Wait till 10:45. And he's like, there's no way. And it's like, hey, you saw those 500 people sign up? They're all out using their vehicles, having fun right now, picking up trash. Because that's maybe where we're a little bit different from other people's. Go use your vehicle. Go drive, right? Go pound on your truck. And when you find trash, then load it up. And so like 10:45, you have 400 people show up with trash. You fill those dumpsters really fast. And so it's...
Do you ever
it's
put a GoPro and time lapse the dumpsters?
No. I
Be
should.
sick.
Yeah, totally.
Put one on each dumpster, or a couple of them. It doesn't have to be all of them, but just to show like those things filling up because you can't see it from the outside.
Yeah, no, you really don't know, and like it's really hard. Like that's where I say like, you know, I can make the events, but like I think media wise, like we could way do a better job, just with some of those ideas. But it's interesting. Like, you find a place that's really dirty, and you do a before and after. Like, it's impressive, right? Like how much trash actually gets pulled out of there. That's the type of stuff that like people want to see. So we did like Hodge a couple years ago, and we did a before and after of like, and that place is really trashed from like shooting trash, but like the amount of views and like just like the guy in Glamis that picks up all the nails, like the impact, right? Like that's the sexy part of kind of what we do that like a lot of people don't necessarily always see. Like that's the stuff that like is important for what we do.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk.
Cool. I like it.
I appreciate you coming out, dude. And we'll be seeing you out at the Clean Dezert events. If you guys want to get involved with them, go to Adam's Instagram, Clean Dezert, or Facebook, and shoot him a message. Try and get involved. And they're a blast, dude.
Thanks,
I
man.
appreciate you doing all that.
Yeah, I appreciate your guys' time here.
So, we'll see you guys later.
Take care.